The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRCMedia, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
It's Thursday, June 25th, 2024. This is FRC Media News. I'm Keith Tebow. Often on the program, we spend time talking about local housing issues, especially affordable housing within the city of Fall River, and the stories of people who are having a difficult time paying their rent or paying their mortgage. This week, we're going to have a special edition of the show focused on public housing. Our special guest this week is the Executive Director of the Fall River Housing Authority, Kevin Sbardella. Public housing in Fall River, I believe, here has been around the authority since, I believe, 1938, if I saw right on the website. That's definitely been very important to cities like Fall River. I want to talk about specifics in terms of the different properties, operations in Fall River, but in general, you've worked for the Public Housing Authority for over 30 years. And how have you seen the importance of it in terms of making sure people can find places to live in general?
It's been extremely important. It's been such a positive to the community because, at one time or another in all our lives, we need some assistance, we need some help. As you know, now more than ever with the affordable housing crisis, there's just no inventory out there that's affordable. We've got so much new development in the city with market rate units, which is good and it's a positive. So the focus has been more on that and less on affordable housing units.
Yeah. Well, the hope on that has been that, more market rate units that are out there, I guess the more housing stock out there in general, the inventory, right? Those may be at a higher level than people can afford, but a lot of times it may, because again, supply and demand, right? Yes. There'll be more supply, hopefully rents would come down across the board. But so far we're not seeing that, right? You haven't as well, obviously.
We're not seeing it yet, but I do believe everything is secular, especially in real estate. So eventually it's going to come back around and the inventory level will increase and the affordability will be a little better. For people out there, for folks out there.
So give us a general overview of the Fall River Housing Authority. There are housing units. I remember as a kid, it was the housing projects, right? Is that really sort of like a degrading term? I mean,
to some people, we refer to them as public housing developments. Right. Over time, you kind of change the titles that you use. However, we have 21 housing developments scattered throughout the city of Fall River, 18 federally funded and 3 state funded.
And what's the difference? Just because where the money comes from, right? Those 3 are funded primarily by the state?
Yes, so solely comes from the state of Massachusetts, and the other 18 HUD, Housing and Urban Development, federal funding. And typically, history has shown there's much more funding for federal housing than there is for state.
And how many residents are currently in these developments?
So we have just under 2,400 residents, both state and federal, and that consists of elderly residents, disabled residents, family residents.
And, what are the general qualifications for someone who can apply for public housing? And a lot of times people will say, public housing, some people may think that it's free housing. It really isn't. I mean, they do have to contribute, correct, to pay
Absolutely.
for their rent?
Everything is based on their income. The formula is 30% of their income. There are deductions allowed. Families get deductions for children. Disabled people get disabled deductions. There's elderly deductions. In some cases, there's medical deductions for out-of-pocket medical, but it's all based on a formula. So all residents are obligated to pay 30% of their income.
So are there different, is that for both the state and the federal developments, 30%? That's the threshold?
Yes.
So is the application the same?
So the federal application can be done in person at our tenant selection offices, can be done online. We can certainly mail an application to someone that wants to apply. Same goes for the state, but the waiting list is a bit different. The state is under, the acronym is CHAMP, and it's a centralized wait list. So everyone that applies for the state, it's on a centralized waiting list.
And that covers anyone who may be on that list across the Commonwealth, correct?
Exactly, yes.
So I want to talk about, when I spoke to you to get an update, I believe it was last fall, early fall, about, the need. So there's 2,400 residents currently in the developments. And I'm sure there's a waiting list for both of those federal and state waiting lists. How many people are on that waiting list right now?
So on the federal side, we probably have roughly over a combined 6,000 people on our waiting list, and that consists of elderly applicants, disabled applicants, and family applicants.
How does that compare in terms of recent times? Let's say even prior to COVID, right? We're delineating our data a lot of times now recently based on COVID.
It's probably, pre-COVID, you could probably, without looking at any hard data, chop off a third of that because there was just much more affordable housing out there on the private side. So some people opted for affordable units, but on the private side and not under the public housing side. But that post-COVID has since dried up. Private market rents are high, much higher than our rents. So there's just no inventory out there for the average person to say, hey, I'm looking for an apartment on Bedford Street. I think it's affordable. That's where I'd like to live. Far and few between nowadays.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, and I know you can't give an exact timeline, but maybe even looking back again pre-COVID to now, if someone was on a waiting list for the federal housing development here, how long would they be expected to wait, and how has that changed?
That has changed quite a bit. Pre-COVID, you were probably 6 to 9 months. Now you're a year to up to 2 years, depending on your individual needs, your bedroom size, if you have a disability,
right,
if there's any special needs that go along with your application.
So what kind of information other than financial is part of the application? And is there, let's talk federal first, because I know state, we spoke a little bit before. State is a little different. We'll get into that because that's more of a statewide system in terms of where you can find housing. But in terms of the federal housing, is there any sort of, applicant interviews at all? Is it just mainly just paperwork? How does that work?
So initially, if someone wants to apply, we have a short, maybe 2 to 3 page pre-application. And you get all the pertinent information, the name of the head of household, potential household members, Social Security, rough income, and then you go into our system. And then as your name approaches the top of the list, then we reach out to you to start the vetting process.
Okay.
Updated income, updated information on all the household members, a background check. We do fingerprinting for a background check. we do a quarry background. And if you meet all the qualifications, then you'll be getting a unit offer relatively, probably within a month or two after that.
Mm-hmm. So have you seen that people who rise up to the list maybe come to a point where they don't qualify any further?
It happens. The unfortunate thing is sometimes people relocate, and they don't update their information with us. So when we attempt to reach out to them, their address has changed, their phone numbers have changed. So at that point, we have to remove them from the waiting list. And then unfortunately, sometimes they come back months later and say, hey, I applied on such and such a date, I still haven't heard. And then we have to explain to them that we attempted to reach out to you, but it's important, and the burden is upon you to give us any updated changes in your address or phone information.
And unfortunately, if they're back on the list, they're back at the bottom?
Back to the bottom, yeah.
What's different? Is there any different qualifications for the state?
The only difference in the state, most of the guidelines and the qualifications are the same. It's just it's a centralized wait list. So whether you're applying from Fall River, from Brockton, from Taunton, from Worcester, if you check off, you can check off as many housing authorities as you want to be considered for, and it's a centralized waiting list that we have to pull from as your name approaches. And what the state has done within the past year is they've contracted with a third-party vendor to pre-vet the applications ahead of time to kind of eliminate if anybody is still interested, not qualified, what have you, rather than waiting till they get to the top of the list and we go to make an offer and either they're not interested or they're not qualified or something's changed in their life.
So as you said, there's 18 federal properties and 3 state developments. So in some ways, that what you just talked about only impacts those 3 developments.
Correct.
And they are Bishop Meade, there's a scattered site in Corky Row.
Corky Row, a scattered building.
And Maple Gardens.
And Maple Gardens in the south end, yes.
So those are the state designated.
3 state sites, yes.
Okay. Now, for all of the residents who are placed in public housing, and I'll get into re-examination or recertification, which is done on a yearly basis, but should these tenants have the expectation that they're there until they can't be there any longer? I guess my question is, how long do people tend to stay, I guess, in public housing?
Well, it varies. We have some people that have entered our program on the family sites and have transitioned to elderly sites as they've aged. And we do have programs and services in place for residents, so disabled elderly people can age in place if there's still a need. If they still have a personal need for affordability, then they can stay as long as they follow all the rules, regulations, stay as long as they need to. Some people transition out, whether it be their income has changed and they want to change, relocation. It's a personal choice. As long as they meet the qualifications, they can stay as long as they like. We do have programs that we offer to try and encourage people for home ownership. That's been a big change over the years, again, due to the market conditions. It's extremely difficult now to afford a home versus just a few years ago, right? The real estate market has just exploded. As the rent prices have gone up, so have the prices of real estate. So
yeah, I do want to get back to some of those programs, not only the programs that can help people transition, but also other programs you have for youth and adults and elderly in the housing authority. But so those that are currently in housing have to I don't know if the correct term is recertify, re-examine every year. What is that process?
So years ago, everybody was redetermined at a hard date of say January, but now we do it by their anniversary date.
Right.
So it relieves some of the burden on the staff. So
instead of doing them all at once,
instead of doing 196 people at one time, we go by the month that they moved in. So they just need, we send them a letter to come in. And if some people have difficulty coming in, we mail the packet, but it's just to update their income verification, any sources of income, assets, school letters for children, whether it's high school, college, what have you, any out-of-pocket expenses that they may be. We use a formula to see if they're eligible, just to determine that they're meeting all the requirements. Any changes in households, some more so in the family, if they have children, so they've got to add a new household member to the lease. Some people get married, they want to add their spouse. Some of the kids are older, they leave the household, so we have to remove them from the lease.
Right.
So,
but if there are any negative issues, is there an opportunity for the housing authority to say, sorry, we can't allow you if they don't follow policies, procedures?
So usually that's addressed. It's ongoing during the course of the year. We wouldn't wait until the re-examination. That's always addressed. Any lease violations, depending on the severity of it, it's addressed accordingly.
I want to shift briefly to another program that is administered through the Housing Authority. That's the Section 8 program, which are vouchers that individuals and families can use to help pay for housing. How does that work here in Fall River? How do people apply to that? And how many vouchers does the authority administer?
So roughly, we administer about 2,200 vouchers. And how that program works, it's still based on 30% of your income. A few different regulations than public housing, but the main thing is, the main point, the person with the voucher can find a unit on their own. They can, if anywhere in the United States, any type of building, as long as the building owner agrees to accept the program guidelines, meet the building code requirements. So that's the beauty of it, and that's why it's so popular. They can go anywhere they like, a particular neighborhood, a particular city, a particular state, as long as they can find a landlord that's willing to participate in the program.
What's the benefit to the landlord?
So the benefit to the landlord is the resident pays their 30% share, and the difference, the HAP, what we call a HAP payment, housing assistance payment, comes directly from us to the landlord. So some landlords like that, because if they have a resident that's late in paying, they know they're getting at least 2/3 guaranteed every month, providing they have to follow all of the guidelines as well.
Right. And do landlords need to register? How do they want to be involved? How does that work?
They can sign up to sign their properties up to participate, but a lot of times the voucher holder will find somewhere. And like anything in any city, you kind of know the buildings and the areas of the city that accept the program. Someone always knows someone that has a voucher that's living in a particular building, and they may say, hey, this is a nice building, you should try to get in here. But yeah, certainly the landlord can register with us under our Section 8 program, but a lot of times the voucher holder will seek out the landlord.
So it's up to the resident, the applicant, to find the housing. So the housing authority doesn't play any role to sort of match people.
No. So many years ago, and there's been so many changes over the years, the housing authority used to keep a list of all the landlords and the properties that were on the program, and we would update that every month. So a voucher holder could walk into the Section 8 office and say, hey, can I see the list of what's available out there? And it would have the landlord's name and number, and they could contact them directly. The biggest change now is the Section 8 program was so popular years ago because rents were affordable, and we were always a bit higher than the market rents then.
Oh.
Now,
Right.
we're either equal or a bit lower, because now a landlord can get more monthly rent on the private market
Right.
than we can pay. So
Right.
HUD has come up with changes, and there's a formula for our area. We can pay a certain percentage over what the fair market rent is to try to attract landlords to our program.
All right. So 2,200 vouchers. Is there a waiting list there, and what's the timeline for people who may be on that list?
So there is a waiting list. Right now, currently, the wait time is about 9 years. That's
9 years.
9 years. That's how popular the program is. We're in 2024, and we are tapping into people from 2015 that were on
Wow.
the waiting list.
Wow. And how many do you have a number of people on that list?
So that's also become centralized.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a hard
Right.
number because people can apply online, and it's
Right.
a central list.
So is that a federal list?
That's a federal program, but state by state.
So again, with it being standardized, for Section 8 vouchers, is it, do you only get Fall River people when one opens up? I mean, can you prioritize, I guess? is the question.
We can't prioritize. It's the next person on the list.
So it's similar to the state housing, public housing.
But most people applying for the Section 8 on our list, it does break down the list of how many people from Fall River. So our area, majority are Fall River.
Okay.
And people who in other towns kind of sign up with those housing authorities in their area.
Okay. So that is not, it's not as, it's standardized, but there's a little more control in terms of making sure that Fall River people would get those vouchers if they were to become available?
Yes.
Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about, we're moving right along here, so I want to get to a couple of other items. I want to talk about the programs that the Housing Authority offers residents. You mentioned one, the acronym is FSS, I believe.
Family self-sufficiency.
Sufficiency.
Yeah.
So that is a way to help people sort of transition, possibly, right, out of the authority. How does that work?
So whenever we have a new resident moving in, or a new voucher holder and existing, we have a department of staff that reach out and try to recruit these residents to participate in the program. And some of the benefits are if you're a resident that's working and then you get a better job or a substantial increase, the increase to your rent, you're still responsible to pay it, but the difference goes into an escrow account, into a savings account essentially. And the resident has to participate with all the guidelines of the program, and when they, upon graduation, depending on how much we put away from them based on the difference on their rent, they get a check, and that's to assist them with either home ownership, college tuition, whatever they may need, a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a really good program because the difference in the increase in your rent is going into a savings account.
What about some other just general programs that residents can take advantage of? I know there's some geared specifically to youth and elderly and families.
So
in
yeah,
general.
we have a variety. So during these summer months, we have senior concerts at all our elderly sites. along with cookouts. More so during the winter, we have health clinics where we partner with different health service providers such as Health First, South Coast Health, and they may come in and do different types of screening, whether it's blood pressure, cholesterol. During COVID, we ran some COVID clinics. For the youth, there's different programs. We participate with the city in the lunch program, and 5 of our sites are locations for the lunch drop-off, and there's activities there. We have cookouts for the family sites as well. We have movie nights. Actually started last night, 1 per week at a different family site, and there's pizza and there's popcorn, and they set up a big screen, usually like on the basketball court or in the playground, and it's really a nice atmosphere. It's a nice feel, and it's like the old drive-in movies. So we do that. We had a program of cooking healthy. At a couple of our family sites where we have an outside agency, people from UMass Dartmouth come in, and some of our staff members do a great job in the different departments. And we try to sign people up. They come, they learn how to cook healthy, and at the end of it, they get to keep the wok or whatever they're using to cook. At Cardinal Maderas on Robeson Street, we have a farmer's market.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Every week, and people who receive food stamps and SNAP benefits, there's an additional amount of money that they can use specifically to buy fresh, buy healthy. So
good stuff happening.
Good stuff. Yeah, we're really diligent in trying to. One important other thing that we do, we just ended a breakfast and serve, whereas we have some of our local police officers come in, and at each of the elderly high-rise buildings, they serve them breakfast and kind of open up dialogue to let our residents know, hey, they're here, these are the services available, this is what you should do if you feel there's a threat in any way or something's going on. So we've got a lot going on. Again, staff members do a great job.
So finally, Kevin, I just want to talk a little bit about the future. I mean, one of the things, since the authority's been around since 1938, it's a long time. A lot of these buildings are showing their wear. So talk briefly about upkeep, and are there opportunities at all for growth in terms of public housing in Fall River?
So as far as growth, adding additional units, there wouldn't be any of that, but the Housing Authority, we have always been very aggressive with our capital funds through our modernization program, where on a yearly basis we're doing $5, $6, $7 million worth of capital improvements to our sites, whether it's new roofs, new windows, exterior repairs, mechanical systems. So we're very aggressive with that. Thankfully, HUD, the federal government, has been, the budget and the funding has been ample. Never as much as you need, but in fairness, we've managed it well.
That's it for this week's edition of FRC Media News. Please visit our website, frmedia.org, for all the latest news and local information. FRC Media News airs Thursdays at 6 p.m. and Fridays at 5:30 p.m. For all of us at FRC Media News, I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Thursday.